You pull a clean t-shirt over your head. The cotton slides across your shoulders, still cool from the drawer, and a second later you barely notice it exists. Maybe you add a hoodie because the air conditioning feels aggressive. Maybe you step into soft socks, lace up shoes, and walk outside carrying your own private climate around your body. Now remove all of it. No shirt, no shoes, no blanket waiting at home. No waterproof layer when the sky opens. Your bare skin meets thorns, insects, cold wind, burning sun, and every sharp edge in the landscape. So the question is simple. For hundreds of thousands of years, with no factories, no fabric, and no sewing machines, why did your ancestors begin wearing clothes at all? The obvious answer is cold. But here is what does not make sense until you think about it. The story of clothing may have started because your ancestors became too good at surviving heat. Long before anyone stitched a sleeve, your ancestors evolved unusually exposed skin and an extraordinary ability to cool themselves by sweating. Anthropologist Nina Jablonski has argued that this heat dumping, the system, helped early members of the human lineage stay active in hot African environments, where thick body fur would have trapped heat during long periods of walking, running, and searching for food. That trade was incredibly useful. It was also dangerous. Your body became a brilliant radiator, but a terrible winter coat. When the sun dropped, rain soaked the ground, or human groups moved into cooler regions, exposed skin lost heat quickly. Evolution had solved one problem by creating another, and your ancestors could not wait 100,000 generations to grow their fur back. They needed an answer now. That answer was not clothing, as you know it. There were no fitted jackets, neat hems, or left and right shoes. The first step was probably much simpler. Take the protective skin of another animal and place it over your own. It sounds obvious, it was not. Archaeologists almost never find the earliest garments because skin, fur, sinew, and plant fiber rot. A stone knife can survive for 1,000,000 years. A hide cape can disappear before anyone remembers the person who wore it. So researchers searched for stranger witnesses. In 2011, geneticist Melissa Toops and her colleagues studied clothing lice, the parasites that live in fabric and attach their eggs to clothing fibers. Their analysis suggested that clothing lice split from head lice at least 83,000 years ago and possibly as early as 170,000 years ago. That does not reveal the first moment someone threw a pelt over cold shoulders, but it suggests clothing had become a regular human habitat by then. Think about that for a second. One of the oldest clues to your wardrobe is a parasite that moved in without permission. The dirt gives you another clue. At Contrabandier's Cave on the Atlantic coast of Morocco, archaeologist Emily Hallett and her team studied deposits dated between 120,000 and 90,000 years ago. Among roughly 12,000 bone fragments, they identified 62 shaped bone tools, including smooth, rounded implements suited for working hides. Nearby were bones from sand foxes, golden jackals, and wildcats. The cut marks were not where you would expect if your ancestors were simply carving off meat. They were placed where a skilled hand would cut to remove the skin while preserving the pelt. This is not a fossilized jacket. It is something almost as powerful, a workshop floor. And notice the location. This was Morocco, not the frozen center of an ice sheet. That means early clothing may have protected your ancestors from more than dramatic cold. Fur and leather could block wind, shield skin from thorns, reduce bites, soften the ground during sleep, and hold warmth through a chilly night. Your first wardrobe may have been born under an African sun, but getting an animal skin was only the beginning, because a fresh hide is a terrible garment. It is wet, heavy, greasy, and filled with tissue that bacteria immediately begin breaking down. Leave it alone, and it stiffens, shrinks, smells, or simply rots. Here is the part nobody talks about. The first clothing makers were not just hunters, they were material engineers. Your ancestors had to scrape away flesh and fat without tearing the skin. They had to dry it, stretch it, soften it, and keep working it until something that once protected an animal could bend around a human body. The bone tools from Contrabandier's Cave matter because bone can be ground into a smooth edge that pushes and scrapes without slicing straight through the hide. A sharp stone is perfect for opening an animal. A rounded bone tool is better for turning its skin into something usable. That is a completely different skill, and it had to be taught. You can imagine a child watching an older pair of hands pull a hide tight, feeling when the surface becomes smooth enough, learning how much pressure is too much. No written instructions, no measurements, just thousands of tiny decisions passed from one mind to another. Clothing was not one invention. It was a chain of remembered tricks. Then your ancestors hit another problem. A loose pelt can warm your back, but it leaves gaps. Wind enters from below. Movement pumps warm air out. Rain runs along the edges. The moment you need to climb, carry, throw, or run, your protection shifts away from the body part that needs it. A cape helps. A fitted garment changes everything. At Canyars, an archaeological site near Barcelona, researchers found a large animal bone dated to about 39,600 years ago. Its surface carried 28 puncture marks made during 6 separate episodes. One group formed a remarkably regular line. In experiments, Luc Doyon, Francesco D'Erico, and their colleagues placed leather over bone and drove a pointed stone tool through it. The new marks matched the ancient ones, startling. The Canyars bone had probably served as a punchboard for piercing hides and making seams. The tool had no eye. It did not need one. Your ancestors could make evenly spaced holes first, then pass sinew, fiber, or another cord through them. The evidence suggests fitted leatherwork existed in Western Europe roughly 15,000 years before eyed needles appeared there. Tailoring began before the needle. Why does that matter so much? Because warmth is not produced by fur alone. Warmth comes from trapped air. A garment that fits around the torso, arms, legs, hands, or feet holds a thin layer of air close to the skin and stops the wind from constantly replacing it with cold air. The real invention was not covering, it was sealing. Once clothing could be shaped to the body, your ancestors carried shelter wherever they moved. A cave protects you only while you remain inside it. A fire protects you only while it burns, and wind or rain can ruin the entire arrangement. Clothing walks with you. That helped human groups enter environments that naked tropical bodies were never built to tolerate. At the Yana rhinoceros horn site in Siberia, located at 71 degrees north, people lived above the Arctic Circle around 32,000 years ago. They occupied a glacial landscape of frozen ground, long winters, and dangerous exposure. Nobody survives that with confidence and a fur blanket thrown over one shoulder. Your ancestors needed layers, footwear, head coverings, mittens, clothes seams, and constant repair. Every tear mattered. Every wet layer could become a threat. Clothing was no longer an accessory to survival. It was part of the life support system. And then something deeply human happened. Once your ancestors created a second skin, they began using it to say things. At Sungir, a site northeast of Moscow dating to more than 30,000 years ago, burials contained thousands of carefully shaped mammoth ivory beads. Around 3,500 beads decorated the clothing of one adult man. 2 adolescents were buried with thousands more, arranged in lines along their arms, legs, chests, and heads. Because the beads remained where the fabric had vanished, archaeologists could trace the ghosts of fitted garments, parkas, trousers, footwear, and decorated head coverings. Here is what nobody tells you about ancient clothing. By the time you can clearly see it in the archaeological record, it is already doing 2 jobs. It protects the body, but it also transforms the person wearing it. A bead sewn onto a parka does not make the parka much warmer. It tells the group that someone spent time making it. It can show belonging, age, skill, family, status, ritual meaning, or a connection that disappeared with the people who understood it. Clothing became visible, memory, and this may be the most important shift of all. Your ancestors stopped relying only on bodies shaped by genes. Instead, they began building temporary bodies from culture. Cold arrives, and you borrow the fur of a fox. Sharp ground appears, and you add soles. Wind attacks the seams, and you tighten the pattern. Your identity needs to be seen, and you cover survival technology with ivory, pigment, shells, and meaning. Evolution normally changes a species slowly. Clothing let your ancestors change themselves before sunset. The world came at them with 4 problems: exposed skin, rotting hides, cutting wind, and landscapes too cold to cross. Your ancestors answered with fur, scraping tools, seams, and layers. Then they turned those layers into language. That is why ancient humans started wearing clothes. The evidence does not point to one moment when embarrassment suddenly created fashion, or to one freezing genius who invented the shirt in a single afternoon. Clothing emerged as a growing system of protection, skill, cooperation, and memory. It began as borrowed skin. It became portable shelter. Then it became part of being human. Now you stand in front of your closet and choose what version of yourself leaves the house. The cotton sleeve touches your arm. A zipper closes beneath your chin. Warm air stays trapped against the same exposed skin. Your ancestors struggled to protect you, barely noticed the miracle. Clothing did not simply cover the human body. It gave the human body the whole planet.